Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of USA Global TV and Radio. The content presented is for informational purposes only and is intended to foster open discussion and debate. Viewer discretion is advised. USA Global TV and Radio does not endorse any particular viewpoint and encourages viewers to seek out additional information and perspectives. Saving America with Dr. David D. Schein.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. The stories keep rolling in, and I am running just to stay up with the action. Anti-ICE violence in Dallas. A sniper shot at a van operated by ICE agents in Dallas. No ICE agents were hurt, but two of the detainees are dead and a third badly wounded. As law enforcement swarmed the roof of the building where the sniper was, he killed himself. Apparently, he had anti-ICE things written on the rounds that were found with him. ICE is doing the work that was demanded by the majority of Americans after the disgraceful and dangerous open border policies of the Biden-Harris administration. There's no excuse for this violence. There have been violent protests at other ICE facilities around the United States. This is not going to help the cause of America, and it certainly doesn't help the Democrat Party. This fringe element is helping the Dems move lower in the polls. The Dems have not served the American people by their violent rhetoric. I suggest some sharp plaintiff attorneys look into civil suits against persons who have called for violence against specific people or groups that resulted in violence, even if it does not meet the high standards for criminal prosecution. This may be one way to tone down the violent rhetoric from the left. Note that Gavin No Sense on one of the late-night TV shows discussed negative remarks toward ICE agents, and then the shooting took place the very next day. I do not believe this is a coincidence. And of course, Chucky Schumer and Hillary Hu have made disparaging and negative statements over the last few years that may have been interpreted to directly encourage violence. At the same time, regarding immigration, I hope the GOP and the Dems will reach some compromise to allow those with no criminal record, a fairly long time here, and who have American-born children to work out a plan to remain here legally. America needs the labor, and it is not practical or financially provident to throw out many of those who are here and making a contribution. At the same time, I do strongly support all efforts to imprison or deport the many who are either escaped criminals from their home countries or have committed crimes here, or, of course, are members of dangerous gangs. All of those should be deported. We should also continue to support self-deportation efforts. Trump miscue on H-1B visas. One path for U.S. employers to get needed talent is the H-1B visa program. This is not an easy path. Employers must show there is a need to use immigrant labor. Then there is plenty of paperwork, including that the employer must promise to pay wages not lower than current prevailing wages for domestic workers, and there is no guarantee the slot will be approved by the feds. Many of those H-1B slots are in high-tech, medical, and research. Trump's plan to charge $100,000 per application for future H-1B applicants is contrary to the future of America. I hope the employers who need these workers will let Washington know in no uncertain terms that this approach must be stopped. Look, I'm not Pollyanna. There are abuses of this program. The fix is to enforce the rules as written, not kill the program with excessive charges. The above was tied to another miscue by Trump. One of the biggest political footballs in the last 18 months has been stopping the CCP's ownership of the popular app TikTok. Trump has announced a deal that would have a handful of U.S. tech companies buy 80% of the app, and then the CCP would be down to 20%. Full disclosure, I'm not on the app and have no plans to join it until the CCP is out completely, not just down to 20%. I do not trust the claims that all handling of the app after the sale will be domestic and somehow they plan to ensure that the CCP is not pulling the data of everyone who uses the app. My concern is backed by the Heritage Foundation. Saving America has featured some of their researchers as guests on recent shows. Comedy tour, well, sort of. Not again that everyone needed to see her or Tim Walz. Kamala Harris is promoting her book and about how badly she lost the 2024 presidential election. Yep, that's right. A person who was a terrible VP to a terrible alleged president is running around bragging about how she ran through over $1 billion in 107 days. Famously, she helped sink her election run when, during a softball interview early in the campaign, she claimed she would not change anything that Demented Joe and herself had done. Obviously, not learning from past mistakes, one of her first big interviews she did for the new joke book continued her claim about supporting Biden's policies. What she has done is to generate a ton of negative publicity from conservative media, none of whom plan to buy the book. The irony of this book is that she had enough true statements about Biden that many Dems are bad at her as well. So from my perspective, this is a win-win-win. The only bigger joke is the Demented Joe's book advance. Rumors are that it could run to $10 million. Now, why would any publisher fund that large in advance to someone who obviously could not write a book at this point due to his decline? Inquiring minds demand to know. And how unpopular is old Joe? The rumors that I am hearing is that his presidential library fund is in big trouble. Bookmobile, anybody? Anti-Semitism on the world stage. Sadly, a number of America's allies have recently called for recognizing a so-called Palestinian state. In his recent speech before the UN, Netanyahu explained clearly that such pronouncements would reward this terrorist group for its actions. In turn, he has offered to return the hostages, to spare their lives and let them live in exile as opposed to killing them off one by one. I would remind the terrorists and anyone who has forgotten that after the terrible terrorist attack on the Israeli athletes during the Olympics in Berlin, the terrorists were hunted down one by one over a multi-year period until all of them were dead. The question becomes, why would these otherwise rational countries take such an anti-civilization position? One theory is that these countries are now bowing to political pressure in their own countries from radical extremists that they have foolishly allowed in their own countries. First, Israel does not care and will not change its commitment to achieve safety for its citizens. Second, the winds of change are blowing, and patriotism and concern for their own cultures is producing a broad conservative movement. I predict that the governments in those countries will begin having conservatives elected. The policies will then mirror what has happened in the United States. Flipping back to the United States, former FBI Director Comey indicted. From the couldn't have happened to a more deserving clown file, the former FBI director who was fired by Trump during his first term has been indicted on allegations of making false statements and obstruction. This was related to some of his testimony about the so-called Russiagate situation. While I'm not a big Trump fan, I knew for the first time that this was brought up that it was a hoax. Putin would never want Trump in the White House versus having a loser like Hillary Clinton. The evidence against her, personally, in my opinion, is much more compelling than the evidence against Comey. Perhaps Comey is only the tip of the iceberg. I can attest to the fact that many conservatives, MAGA people or not, want actual prosecutions to begin, not just talk. As a footnote, I'm laughing as the Dems who have utilized the legal system for roughly a decade of oppression against Trump and his supporters may finally be facing prosecution. They are squealing like pigs on the way to becoming bacon. Ryan Ruth found guilty. Fortunately, being stupid does not prevent a person from facing criminal charges. Ruth is the oddball who is accused of setting up a sniper's nest near a golf course where Trump was playing. Fortunately, the nest was discovered by the Secret Service before he could shoot down anyone. My understanding is that the evidence against him was compelling. Obviously, the jury agreed. The comedy show here was that Ruth represented himself. His antics were crazy. Frankly, I think he was trying to set up an insanity plea or at least diminished capacity. His opening statement was a total non sequitur. After being warned by the judge, he was eventually cut off, I believe only 7 minutes in. The rest of the trial did not go any better for him. We lawyers have a phrase: an attorney who represents himself has a fool for a client. That applies to non-lawyers as well. Budget shutdown looms. Chucky is not the brightest bulb, and his unreasonable demands to allow a temporary budget deal are not going to advance the Dem cause for sure. My understanding is that the Dems want to reverse the GOP's attempted to clean up Medicaid, and they also are demanding free medical care for illegals. Being a member of the majority of Americans who work for their medical care, nobody I know favors giving medical benefits to able-bodied persons who could work and earn their own medical care. That same majority do not want free medical care for illegals. The Dems are in a less than 20% position on these slots. It is disruptive for all to have a government shutdown. Sadly, it does not save any money in the long run. So most Americans do not want to shut down. This would seem to be a bipartisan issue.
All rise.
Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure that you'll agree that he deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes Jess Todtfeld, who helps people who want to leverage their power of media to grow their business, build a brand, or change the world for better. Jess Todtfeld, CSP, is one of the top communication and media training authorities in the U.S. He is an in-demand international speaker, author, and consultant to some of the top companies and brands in the world. He created Media Ambassadors in 2018 to help others tap into media as a powerful marketing tool. An unusual accomplishment is that Jess holds a Guinness record for publicity for more than a decade by giving most interviews in 24 hours. His books have reached the USA Today bestseller list, Wall Street Journal, and Business Week. Media Secrets, his latest book, hit #1 on 25 different Amazon lists and hit #1 in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. His earlier career involved in 13 years experience as a TV producer for NBC, ABC, and Fox, having booked and produced over 5,000 segments. Check his website for many more details about this interesting person. We welcome Jess Todtfeld for his first appearance on Saving America.
We're writing this book called Epic Podcast Revolution. We're a podcast agency as of this year, and my background, maybe you saw it in there. I have a Guinness record for media interviews, and really my main business over the last 18 years has been media training and presentation skills training for organizations, businesses. The UN is a big client of mine. And a logical next step was to create a podcast agency. We had a kind of a little boutique PR company that my wife actually is leads, and because certain leads come to me and then she'll take care. But yes, podcasting, unbelievable, and I feel like it's still exploding. And we're 20 years in from it actually starting. I'm curious. Okay, so you said you were in radio prior. Explain, give me kind of the little timeline. I saw pieces of it, but I figured I better ask you of being a professor and being in the business world and then being out there and broadcasting. So what's the timeline exactly?
Well, it's a 50-year timeline, actually a little bit more than that. I was involved with FM radio when I was in college, and speaking of activities leading to other businesses, I was doing a weekly 1-hour radio show on the college FM station, and it did well enough that Public Radio Philadelphia, WHYY-FM, approached me, and I ended up finishing the show the next 2.5 years on the public FM radio station in Philadelphia. And as I was out there covering the arts, and I ended up running an agency, creating an agency and running an agency with folk singers and fine artists and rock bands. And we booked them mostly at colleges and clubs all over the greater Philadelphia area. And then I went to grad school and I gave up the business. I'm still not sure that was the right decision, but I gave up that business and went to grad school and did an MBA and a law degree, corporate law for 10 years, private practice for 15 years. And then I moved into teaching. And one of the things that happened is I said, I'm really not getting the traction I want. So I went back and got a PhD, and that helped me with developing research techniques like better writing, better research. So then I did some more radio, believe it or not, did AM radio daily in Richmond, Virginia for a year. And that was an interesting experience. And we went off the air because we could not get sponsorship, which we may talk about today, and regarding sponsorships for podcasts. And then I got my first book. I was full-time academic with part-time law practice, and I did my first book, was released in 2018, called Decline of America, about the American presidents. And the question is how do you promote it? Because I was with a small publisher. I had a real publishing contract, which was kind of exciting. But because they were a small publisher, it was like, well, sell your own book. Well, how do you sell your own book? So in a couple years into this, a professional PR person here, Sandy Lawrence, who was with Compaq Computer, which of course was acquired by Hewlett-Packard, she became a big company experience. She said, well, how about if I interview you on a podcast? So we started doing that in early 2020, and we called it Saving America because it was based on kind of the concept behind my first book. And we went along with that, and it's fairly low cost. We've been on Zoom the whole time, and we went from the university Zoom to our own commercial Zoom account and normal growth. Rachel Harrison, who is my producer, because of COVID, I began teaching online. So I teach some business law classes. So Rachel said to me, well, why don't we take clippets of your different business law classes and put them up on the podcast networks as Business Law 101. So we had two shows running, Saving American Business Law 101, and we did that kind of an avocational interest. And then a little over, well, about a year and a half ago now, we got introduced to not one, but two syndication networks at the same time. So we were introduced by one of my podcast guests said, well, Dr. Dave, you might want to talk to our people over here at the Brushwood Media Network. Well, nobody knows the Brushwood Media Network directly except us who are on it, but it's the Apple Podcasting Network. And it delivers some numbers. So Business Law 101 runs on the Apple Network daily after the news, 2.5-minute piece on latest news updates on business law. And that is averaging about 900,000 hits a month. And then Saving America runs once a week on Saturday as a 1-hour show, which again has progressed. We include a monologue from me as an opening, and then 2 guest slots. And what happened with that is that's averaging between 2 networks about 100,000 hits a month. And the other network that we got connected with is called USA Global Television and Radio. That's actually the name of the network. And we're in full webcast on that network, but we're audio only so far on the Apple Brushwood network. And sometime in there, we just recorded episode 47, ended recording a few minutes ago, close, is something called Unscripted Politics, which runs every Saturday afternoon on the Brushwood Apple Network. And the producer of the Brushwood Apple Network put together Kevin McDonald, who has a daily show, and me, and says, I think having a conservative or liberal go at it for an hour would be a cool show. And that's called Unscripted Politics, and that's averaging over 70,000 hits a month. The reason we talk about hits is because if nobody's listening, why does anyone care? So the numbers have become a big deal as we face the economic reality is that if we don't start selling advertising and sponsorships, something's going to have to give.
Yeah. And I want to take it back to when you first in 2020 put up one of the two shows. What were the numbers like? And I'm asking this because I think, when anybody starts something, you got to start somewhere. What were the numbers like maybe in those first few weeks or year? Obviously, there was something in 2020 that happened that kept people at home and maybe tuned in more. But what were some of your initial numbers?
I'm not really sure, but we had it was a good build. I'm very active on social media, so I've had one of the early LinkedIn accounts. LinkedIn, of course, is a very good business account. And then Rachel, my producer, made sure that we were on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which is now X, and things like that. So basically, our early promotion was, since we were not syndicated, was through social media and people who knew me personally, people who were interested in the book and things like that. And so I don't recall the exact numbers, but it would have been in the hundreds initially. And the primary promotion of the book up until syndication, or the whole thing, was we were up on YouTube and Spotify consistently very early in the game. And YouTube and Spotify are the two biggies in terms of open networks where you can post your stuff. And we've actually found some interesting things, like you could create training stuff that you don't want to give away for free. You can put it up on YouTube and choose it to be non-indexed, which means people can't search for it. They have to get your hot link to go to it. So that was how we got started, was on YouTube and Spotify. We're still on YouTube and Spotify. Our cumulative numbers are over 250,000 hits. And the reason that's relevant is actually, as I'm sure you know, you get to a certain number and YouTube and Spotify will monetize it to a certain extent.
Yes. And obviously, as your numbers get bigger and bigger, you have more opportunities. You can go directly to an advertiser, or somebody can come directly to you, or it can be Spotify or one of the others choosing to put it in. And people get monetized on YouTube when they hit a certain threshold as well. So here's some of my questions, which is, all right, so for the book is a combination of people starting out, but also what have people figured out along the way. Let's start with content. What have you figured out as far as you probably have your own formula for what you feel is an interesting momentum of how things should take place in your shows? What's your take on interesting content?
One of the most challenging things is, if you're selling a newspaper, you have a defined audience, either a neighborhood newspaper or a citywide newspaper. One of the challenges for podcasting is that you have an unlimited audience, but it's not geographically defined.
Yeah.
So you basically, what we're talking about in terms of locating sponsors, we're looking for national and international companies that might want to have a little extra exposure, because while we're friends with a lot of local businesses, I've been in business in a long time here in Greater Houston, Texas, we're not a household word internationally or nationally, so it presents some special challenges. So I think that's the starting point is, first of all, you do have to have the numbers, but secondly, you've also got to be able to define your audience. So the way we've structured it is, Business Law 101 is primarily nonpartisan. It's, hey, this is what the Supreme Court ruled the other day. Here's a layman's interpretation of that case in 2.5 minutes. And of course, we've had a lot of Supreme Court decisions recently. We have lots of product. And then for Saving America, the opening monologue is distinctly political, but our guest slots are not. So, but because we open with a political spin, though I think it's a rational one, then that does restrain our sponsorship possibilities. If you think about it, as might be some people don't want to be involved in a show that has a political viewpoint.
I mean, at our podcast agency, we talk about attract and repel. Instead of going for the mediocre middle, you're going to attract certain people and you'll repel some others, which is fine. If you're finding your audience out of 8 billion people on the planet, they're ideally you have ones that just say, oh, wow, this is the show for me. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things is we are very purposeful in our guest selection for Saving America. We focus on nonfiction authors who either three areas: business, politics, and community action. So my next guest interview is next Tuesday. We'll be interviewing a person who runs a non-medical fertility clinic. So what does that have to do with life? It's something that the community might find interesting because, you know, so many people associate fertility with going to doctors and taking hormones and maybe doing very expensive procedure, IVF.
Yeah.
Whereas this agency that this person runs is focused on that. And we're not doing a lot of politicians right now because it's not actually politician season, but during politician season, we do talk to people, but we want them to explain to the people why did Dr. Schein even interview them? What makes them special, somebody that you might want to pay attention to? And I think that's important. I think one of the things we do is we try and have very short interviews, not just people go rambling on and on and on. And I think a structured interview helps keep the audience engaged. And one of the things we asked the Brushwood Media Network, we said, well, how do you know we had 900,000 hits? And how does that work? Does that mean somebody listened for 2 seconds? And they said, no, it means somebody listened for at least 5 minutes. Well, of course, if you're doing Business Law 101, the whole show only runs 2.5 minutes. It means that people are largely listening to the whole episode. And that's kind of reassuring to us. And the numbers go up each month. So we become numbers watchers. But again, in the early days, we were not numbers watchers. We learned to do that as we progressed.
And so with the numbers going up, are you going to make any tweaks to the show, or are you going to stick with what you feel is working? What goes through your head once you see some momentum?
Well, the numbers have gone up every month, which is very exciting, but the rate of increase has slowed down a little bit. We see seasonal adjustments. It's something people have to grow up and adjust to. Is summertime sometimes is a little slower, and other times are a little faster. So we've adjusted to that, but we've had slow increments. One of the things that we're focused on right now is to make sure that we're producing the best quality show that we can do. For instance, simple things, maybe not so simple. You're using a professional microphone. I'm using a professional microphone. We just had somebody involved in our unscripted politics that we recorded just before this. And the third person on was not with a professional microphone and high-speed internet. If you're serious about this business, you've got to make a capital investment. So the microphone I'm using is a Shure microphone that is designed for radio station use.
Right.
There are other microphones specifically designed for podcasting. The number one rule is you've got to be crystal clear, or people are going to turn you off immediately.
True. Even with video, you have to, if they can't hear you, good luck. I mean, if it's a little fuzzy, okay, people can live with that. But not if they can't hear you. If it's like that, good luck. Nobody will put up with that. And so do you see your programs as audio first going forward as well? Or do you think that there's a moment happening with video?
The trend line is unquestionably toward video, and that I still believe that the majority of our audience are listening in their cars.
Yeah.
And because of the way things are today, you plug your phone into your car. and they're listening through their car radio on their phone, when the phone, of course, has the internet signal to the podcast. But it is number one is audio. You have to positively, just as you just said, if you don't have great audio, you got a problem. The video can be a little less, but I can tell you that my understanding is Spotify has recently gone from audio only to video and audio, which again is called webcasting. And my understanding is that some of these other big networks are doing it. The big holdup is bandwidth. And of course, we're in a competition. I say we, meaning people who are podcasting and webcasting. We're in a competition with those clowns called the AI kings, right? It's that AI stuff in crypto and AI are sucking up massive amounts of bandwidth. So my understanding is that there is not just to create more electric energy, but also to create more bandwidth.
Yeah, I mean, when you bring up AI, there's also AI generated podcasts. But Simon Sinek, the author and speaker, I was watching an interview with him, and he had said, the thing that makes humans wonderful are our mistakes. So tuning in and maybe, you said a few times, or you looked at somebody and said, oh, you know what? Well, maybe now I see a slightly different perspective on that, or, take it in some direction that's not as finely tuned as the perfect AI version. Do you agree with that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't want anything that we're selling to be AI based. Now, can you use AI as a tool maybe to clean up a broadcast, or what we call a podcast we call a broadcast?
Yeah.
Today. And so I think it's great to use AI as a tool, but I don't want to be listening to an AI version of Dr. Dave Schein and say, oh, well, let me tell it what I want it to say, on Chat GPT-5. I don't think that's what people want to hear. I think people want to hear, and I think your comment about nobody's perfect. And I become more sensitive to it because I'm sensitive to my own mistakes, and we pre-record everything.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I'm a news junkie. When I'm not listening or recording, I'm listening to the news. And it's amazing how many mistakes I hear on live broadcast on the television news and in the radio and even the big networks.
Yeah. Our own antenna is up. Maybe some people miss it. But that's part of being human too. All right. It's because I know I don't want to overstay. We booked about a half hour here. We got about 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes. I'll do a speed round then,
Okay,
which is,
sure.
which is, what's the biggest mistake that you feel like you've made along the way as a podcaster? And then how did you fix it?
Well, I don't think we fully comprehended the need for good technology fast enough. So
Okay,
we went to the profession. I've had a bizarre thing because since I did radio, I've had my own radio microphone for years, but we didn't hook it up to the modern computer. And it's this simple. I went to the guitar store, which is a national chain that sells guitars and audio equipment and things like that. And I walk in and I say, I need a converter to connect my radio station microphone, which is something called coax cable, to my computer. And in the box around the checkout counter, they have the stuff that they don't want shoplifted. It's hard to shoplift a guitar. This thing is a little black box that you plug your coax into, and it connects to your computer, and it lets you use these wonderful radio station mics on a modern laptop or computer. So that was one of the more interesting things, was how easy it was to do after having delayed doing it for so long. Makes a big difference.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. Upgrading faster instead of waiting and being slower. Right now I'm using a 4K camera. I have more lights than I ever did. I didn't always have a mic up against my mouth. It was, talking into the computer at one point, which is silly because it sounds tinny and far away because it's far away. It makes sense. How do you probably have gotten criticism along the way. what advice you have for people related to getting criticism or negative feedback?
Well, we've had pretty universal success with our guests. So most of the criticism bluntly is directed at me. And, I've been an attorney for a long, long time. I've been a college professor for a long time, and I've done radio previously. So I have pretty broad shoulders. And I think if you're doing anything where you're sticking yourself out there, you need to anticipate that not everybody is going to love you. And I think you made reference to this a few minutes ago, and it's okay. And we love feedback. We have started to get some emails from listeners, and we've had some real interesting things sent to us by email. And we always try and respond, whether it's positive or negative. We'll make reference to it. We don't embarrass people, but we'll do that. And that's frankly, I think, when you're breaking through, when you get audience feedback, because for every person that contacts you, I've heard there's 10 to 100 people who are definitely looking and paying attention, just didn't happen to feel like sending you an email. So
Yeah.
I love getting that feedback, and we do read it. And if there's a suggestion in there, sometimes we'll take it.
And do you see podcasting primarily as a standalone business or marketing tool or both? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we started it as a marketing tool, but it has grown into, we're basically, I have two full-time jobs. I'm a full-time university professor teaching a very heavy course schedule, and I am podcasting with 3 different podcast systems. That's a lot of hours of preparation and editing after the fact and stuff like that. So I take it very seriously. And I think if you want to build audience, you've got to take it seriously. It's better to be modest and do what you can do, but appreciate the fact that if you want to get serious about it, certainly if you want to get to sponsorship, you've got to produce a great product.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, you brought up the amount of time or the formatting as far as, shorter, tighter interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people like Joe Rogan who have a 3-hour podcast, and there's some people maybe they have 2 minutes. What are your thoughts on figuring out how long it should be for most people?
Well, we're on networks, so we're buying defined time slots. So that makes it real easy. And it's interesting because 2 weeks ago, I was interviewed live on a podcast. And there's not a lot of podcasts that are done live. This one was. And the guy said, we're on from 7 to 9. We're going to do somebody from 7 to 8. We'd like you to be the guest from 8 to 9. And I'm doing that. We had a very wide-ranging interview. We covered life and the stars and everything. And he's still going. And my host is going at 10 after 9, quarter after 9, about 20 after 9. He says, well, I guess we need to let you go home and get dinner, because he knew that I was going to eat after the show.
Yeah.
And so that was a little unusual. So I think if you tell your guests that you're going to have them from 8 to 9 p.m. or 8 to 9 a.m., probably a good idea to stay on track. And I think that helps to define your audience better also.
Yeah. Yeah. And right. These are all the things people figure out along the way. And now if you had to start a brand new podcast tomorrow, not that you need more shows, but in a totally different niche, where would you start first? Like what would the checklist be for you?
I have a couple avocational interests, arts and theater. And as I mentioned, I used to do arts and theater criticism for public radio. And
I mean, strategy wise, like what would your strategic view of it be?
Is presenting a particular view. And one of the problems that I have is that I go to the theater locally here in Houston. We've done reviews. We call them Starstruck, but that's too narrow an audience. And so to do an entertainment show, I would probably need to get enough context going where I could interview people out of Hollywood and out of the recording industry and things like that in order to make it a credible show.
Nice. Okay. And So where do you see any predictions or kind of round up into this? Any predictions for the next 5 years for podcasting? You've been in it for 5 years, or you've been in broadcasting before that, but you've seen some growth there. What are your thoughts going forward?
I think there's going to be a shakeout. We're in that process right now, quite bluntly, we're going to have to either get sponsorships or reduce the number of shows. I don't anticipate going off the air, which of course the term we used to use for radio. But it costs money. We've got staffing, we've got support. And so for the future, I think we're going to have to look at it more as a business. And anybody can go on YouTube and load anything. But I think if you're serious about it and you want to have something that persists and runs for a long period of time, like 5 years, you've got to make the investment in both time and resources.
Please proceed.
Speaking of shutdowns, Kimmel returns to ABC after only 6 days. My commentary on this is that he shed some fake tears and did not apologize for his earlier statements about Charlie Kirk's assassination. As I've said earlier, I oppose government censorship. The left is still trying to decry his suspension as government censorship. Hey, it's about the money. That is still true. This was another stupid decision by Disney, the formerly great producer of children's and family programming and the operator of amusement parks. I've been boycotting Disney for over 5 years, and I do not plan to return until they show some consistent smarts. On the positive side, 2 major owners of a total of 71 ABC affiliate stations have continued to air news coverage instead of his show. Good for them. It should be a decision that the stations make in any event. Beyond Israel's Iron Dome, while some missiles do get through the Iron Dome protecting Israel, it is generally very effective. However, it won't work much for larger land masses like the United States. It can also be a very costly system to operate. On the very positive front, Israel has announced what it is calling the Iron Beam. This is a system that uses a concentrated laser to knock offending items from the sky. Right on the heels of this announcement, there was a strong suggestion that this could be used to protect Ukraine from the drones and missiles that are being sent by Russia at its civilian population. I'd like to add that I hope such a system will soon be installed in Taiwan. This would let Xi and the CCP know that there would be no easy conquest of Taiwan. The U.S. and the Israelis have current excellent anti-missile defense systems, but the use of those systems generally requires very expensive missiles to be shot at the incoming drones or missiles. As an example, when Israel defended itself from an Iranian attack in June, in just a few days, 200 interceptor missiles were launched at a cost of roughly $1.5 billion. The Iron Beam will be much less expensive and hopefully even more effective. And who doesn't like a good animal story? Arnold the Goose is released into the wild. I credit the CBS affiliate in Boston for this story. So Arnold the Goose hurt his foot and was taken to the New England Wildlife Center Cape Cod branch for surgery. Shortly after he arrived, his mate, named Amelia, was knocking on the window to let Arnold know she was waiting for him to return. Maybe she was trying to keep an eye on him, make sure he wasn't chasing any of the other goose or ducks or whatever. In any event, after recuperating for a few weeks, he was released and Amelia was waiting for him. The two flew off to their usual pond. The center indicated that 2 geese have been a couple for at least several years, and I hope they have many happy years to come.
Please raise your right hand.
Bidengate, it's just getting started. I like to support news outlets that give the slopstream media some competition. One of my recent go-to sources is the Washington Free Beacon, an email newsletter. They recently ran an article called Outstanding Work, Doctor, How Jill Biden's Lust for Power Saved America. It was written by Andrew Stiles. It reports on a new book by a couple of insiders that blow the lid off the fabrication that Joe Biden was actually with the program, as we say. The book is Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. It takes a hard shot at Jill Biden, who is blamed for continuing to push demented Joe as a candidate for her own desire to enjoy the accoutrements of presidential office. I can see her side to it, but frankly, it appears to have morphed into elder abuse. The tilt to the reference book is that by pushing Joe as far as she did, by the time the early debate exposed Joe's failings to the world, it was too late for the Dems to run a real candidate. They dropped in Kamala the Weird, one of the worst candidates in recent memory. Particularly damning is his quote regarding the care it took the staff to cover up for Biden, manage his calendar and his personal needs, which included almost daily sessions with a makeup artist to hide the physical signs of his age. As I've said before, Nancy Pelosi is older than Joe and the still greedy blank blank that she has been for years. Condition is the issue, not the actual age. I do not ascribe to the line about the running a better candidate. The fact is that the Dems are an ethically bankrupt operation and the public has figured it out. I don't think the Dems have a chance this past November due to the carnage they caused over the last 4+ years. Folks, check out some of the polls. 83%, 84% of Americans are standing for validation of voting and making sure that American citizens are the people voting. The Dems are polling at like 21%. It is time for the Dems to go away and to bring back at least something that resembled the original Democratic Party, because this is sure as heck not even an interesting operation. That doesn't mean the Republicans can let down their guard, because I remember when the Dems were on the floor and should have been trounced out, that Newt Gingrich and the batch of incompetent GOP folks back in the late 1990s let the Dems get back up on their feet. So let's not screw up twice in a row.
Sustained.
Antitrust ruling against Google. A federal judge in Virginia has ruled that Google is an online advertising monopoly. This was in response to a suit brought by the U.S. Department of Justice. It is the third antitrust hit that the company has taken recently. Of course, Google, through its parent company Alphabet, will be appealing all these decisions for many years to come. So ultimately, the outcome will not really be known until the final appeals are concluded.
Motion denied.
The headline reads, "This ingredient in popular beverage is linked to cancer." That's scary. The story is especially bizarre because the drinks are supposed to be healthy beverages. The newsletter cites an article by the Daily Mail that the additive is inulin, a prebiotic fiber that helps feed healthy bacteria in the gut microbiomes by producing short-chain fatty acids, which can improve digestion by regulating bowel movements and preventing constipation. That's a quote. It is in popular drinks like Poppy and Olipop, which are promoted as being healthy alternatives to regular soda, maybe not so much. However, this additive may lead to digestive issues and cancer. They mention stomach cancer and colon cancer. The article notes that Pepsi acquired Poppy for $1.95 billion, maybe rethinking that after being sued for $5 million for claims that the drink is not really healthy stuff. On the other hand, there's been such a huge surge in consumption of such drinks over the last few years, you can see why Pepsi made the business decision. So I certainly hope this gets sorted out. And remember, many times we hear these reports of something being bad for you, and then later a different report comes out and says, well, maybe it wasn't that, it was something else. I don't drink any of these type of beverages, so I'm not super worried.
Objection, Your Honor.
Ending daylight savings time. Even when I was younger, that transition to daylight savings time in the spring was never easy. As I've aged a bit, it seems to hit harder. Then messing with the clocks in the fall. From my perspective, I'll take either leaving it advanced or leaving it on international time. However, my personal preference is that we stay with the international time system, given the way the whole world communicates today. I think this is most friendly for business and personal applications. What do you think?
May I remind you, you're still under oath.
America secures the Panama Canal. In a significant step and one that should have taken place years ago before the Chi-Coms got embedded in our backyard, new Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth announced a deal with the Panamanian president. The Panama Canal will be secured end-to-end by the United States. Further, U.S. military ships will be given priority through the canal. Panama has also withdrawn from a Chi-Com Belt and Road Initiative as part of the deal. In addition, the U.S. will return to operation of several military bases and begin joint training operations with Panama's military. As I mentioned in a previous Saving America, the canal is the second busiest waterway in the world and is crucial to U.S. water transportation and, of course, military access. Parallel to this, two critical Panamanian ports are now controlled by C.K. Hutchinson, which is controlled by China. A buyout by a mega group, including BlackRock, announced a $23 billion deal in early March. However, it is on hold since early April as the Chi-Coms are panicked about the deal. I think something will be done here, but not in the next few days. Again, it's crucial to tie back the aggression of the Chi-Coms in the world stage, but especially in Panama, given it's in our backyard.
Silence in the court.
Housing market in turmoil. Reports are that the number of unsold new homes has surged in previously hot markets like Texas and other Sunbelt states. The challenge is that builders, when pressed, can discount their homes to get them moving, which then causes the buyers to move to the new home market and reduces demand in the resale market. Austin, Texas, up the road from Houston, is often mentioned lately as a tough, expensive market that is experiencing big issues. All I can say is that housing is expensive, but real estate taxes and insurance are an even bigger concern today.
I'll allow it.
And as if the Dems needed more bad news, mortgage fraud allegations against Letitia James. Most Americans know that Letitia James was the New York Attorney General that went after Trump for reportedly inflating the value of properties he owned that were mortgaged. This is despite the fact that not a single bank had complained. The huge bogus ruling against him is likely to be vacated on appeal. Now, allegations have surfaced that the New York resident claimed that her principal personal residence was a property in Virginia to get more favorable financing. The Federal Housing Finance Agency has raised these issues of fraud. Another allegation is that she has a 5-unit property in Brooklyn, but claimed it only had 4 units in permit applications and mortgage documents to get better treatment. Even more entertaining, she has been reported to have shown her father as her husband on loan docs, again to get more favorable terms. This could lead to prosecution for wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and false statements to a financial institution. I've heard one expert opine that she may have to resign her position even if she's just charged with these crimes, not awaiting a possible conviction. Hey, we'll be watching this one.
Order in the court.
SpaceX crew docked with the International Space Station and brought back the 2 stranded astronauts and 2 others. While the whack left is going after Elon Musk for trying to save America, his SpaceX company has continued to boogie along. A SpaceX rocket took off for the International Space Station and got the job done by bringing back 2 astronauts who were stranded when their Boeing-made rocket had mechanical problems 9 months ago. I note that Demented Joe likely could have asked SpaceX to do this rescue earlier, but may have refrained since Musk began helping Trump with his campaign last summer.
Sustained.
Go woke, go broke, Delaware. The movie theater company AMC has announced that it is moving its headquarters out of Delaware to Nevada. A summary report indicates that about 20 major companies have joined the exodus from Delaware. Those include Madison Square Garden Entertainment and Simon Properties, the country's largest mall operator. One trigger was the highly reported departure of Elon Musk's companies. He relocated Tesla and SpaceX to Texas, while Neuralink and Twitter X moved their headquarters to Nevada. Tiny Delaware was the darling of the big corporations for about 2 centuries. This was due to its corporate laws and specialized court that advanced the development of major American corporations. It is hard to summarize the reason for the departures, but some claim that it is due to a trend toward less friendly to business court decisions. The big one was a ruling against a huge compensation package for Musk from Tesla. In fact, Musk tried twice and lost both times as shareholder groups opposed the package. The allegations are that Delaware courts have gone woke, way woke, and corporations have a choice. They can move to other states, and of course, we're happy to have them here in Texas.
How does the defendant plead?
I've been advocating for recycling for 50 years. I recall the first Earth Day and the early days of recycling home waste when I was a young college student in Philadelphia. Most of us recycle aluminum cans, various bottles, and cardboard. In some places, we're able to recycle certain plastics and even yard waste these days. Generally, while if you're patient, you might get a few dollars for aluminum cans. Most of the time, most of us don't bother to try and get paid for our recycling. However, a recent article noted that Target chain has announced that it might be possible to sell them some of your electronics. Target calls it the trade-in program. They will take used smartphones, tablets, smartwatches, smart speakers, headphones, video games, and video game consoles. This is great since I know I have a bunch of stuff taking up the closet space and I hate to throw the stuff in the trash. Go to Target website for details. And by the way, you get paid in Target credit. You don't get cash. It was noted that presently only 17% of electronic waste is being recycled. Note that Amazon, Best Buy, and Staples all have similar programs.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it.
I want to give a shout out to Bolt House Farm. Because of the way their salad dressing is made, I prefer it due to its low fat, lower sodium, and lower calories while preserving the various popular flavors. Well, I was disappointed with one of their dressings recently. I went to the website and found it was relatively easy to email them. That's not true for many companies. Now, they asked for a lot of specific details on the product, but that makes sense so they could identify the specific product and how it was produced. Even more amazing, they responded to my email with a very nice response in less than 24 hours. Other companies should take note since generally customer service is totally awful these days. I, for one, plan to stop using those companies that cannot cooperate with the consumers when they have a legitimate issue.
Silence in the court.
More climate change hypocrisy. This was inspired by a report by the BBC. So the short version is that in November, there is going to be a huge world climate change summit called COP30. It will be held in the Brazilian city of Belém. This is a historic city in northern Brazil that is considered the gateway to the Amazon. It has a population of about 1.3 million with about 2.5 million in the metro area. Incredibly, it is projected as many as 50,000 people would attend this summit in this Brazilian city. So they are demolishing a swath of the Amazon rainforest to build a 4-lane highway. This could impact tens of thousands of acres, according to the BBC report. As is often asked by us realists, is this a sensible way to even review the issue of climate change? The rainforest does absorb carbon for the world, of course, but I don't think 4-lane highways do the same trick.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you next week.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.